Welcome to another edition of the Insider Mailbag. I'm Jared Johnson, and I have a lot of really good questions, as usual, from Inside the Red Raiders subscribers, so I'm going to dive right into these questions. First one comes from Blake65. He says, hopefully this year we get a full spring practice in. With that in mind, has Tech released the spring schedule for practices and spring scrimmage? That is a really good question. Of course, if they had released that, oh man, it'd been screamed from the mountaintops, of course, with the schedule and the spring game and all that. I am hopeful that there is going to be some type of spring game, but of course, with the COVID era, all that, this is unique. These are unique circumstances. Last year they only got, I think, 3 or 4 spring practices in before everything was, called off. And, it happened right in the middle. I think it happened right before spring break, actually, in terms of, COVID really becoming a pandemic and, things being shut down from coast to coast. And then, of course, all over the world, for most of the world. So, obviously, it's bigger than Texas Tech spring football and Red Raider football in general. But, I think if it's possible, then Texas Tech will have spring ball. Now, will any fans being allowed in? Will they have a certain amount of fans allowed in the Jones for a spring game? I think the plan was to not do anything in Dallas this time anyways and kind of keep it in West Texas anyway. So, I don't know if they'll do another thing in Midland. I don't know, if they'll have a spring game at all. So, which is, they'll have some kind of scrimmage. Now, whether fans are there, I don't know. Whether media is going to be allowed to go to any of this, I find that highly unlikely unless they just let us stay in the stands or something. They have some kind of organized deal where we're in our own section of the Jones. I could see them maybe doing that, but I could also see them maybe not even risking that, wanting to risk that, which I understand. So, it got pretty real in terms of security. Even if family or certain members of administration, I was told, wanted to go to the football facility during the season or before the season, they had to get tested, beforehand. So, which makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. It's a lot on the line. So, no, they haven't announced anything. I don't know exactly what the plans are. I know they're hopeful to have spring ball, of course, because it's important. But when that is announced, I will definitely share that all over the place. On the radio, on here, on Twitter, of course, on Inside the Red Raiders. TxTechaustin wants me to rank the basketball programs in the Big 12 with reasoning. Now, in terms of, I'm going to do a power rankings as of right now, all right? Number 1 is Baylor, obviously undefeated. Number 2, Texas. Now, they've lost a couple games. They lost to Tech. They lost to Oklahoma. Now, they lost to Oklahoma. They were without a couple of key players, and I think Shaka was out too. So, Coach Shaka Smart. So, that's, I don't want to say with an asterisk, but that's tough when you're missing some key players like that. So, and especially if it's not even an injury. I think it's just the protocol. Shaka had it, and then contact tracing. So. That's tough for them. But I think Texas is firmly number 2. Then after that, it's a big debate on who's number 3. I'm going to, right now, just as of this week, right here, right now, I'm just going to say, I think I'm going to give Oklahoma 3rd because they did beat Texas. They beat Kansas. They lost to Tech, but that was a really close game. Austin Reeves, one of the best players in the Big 12, missed a bunny right there at the buzzer that would have sent it to overtime. And who would have knows what would have happened? Needless to say, Tech hadn't been all that great in overtime. So that's interesting, right there. So I'll say Oklahoma 3. Then I'll say West Virginia 4, Texas Tech 5, Kansas 6, Oklahoma State 7. And I'm thinking I almost want to move Oklahoma State ahead of Kansas, which is crazy. But Kansas has lost several games in a row. They're really struggling. Oklahoma State, I don't know, man. They're pretty good. Oklahoma State, you can make an argument for them being 5th. So 3 through 7 is all up for debate. They're all very similar. And then after that, I'll put Iowa State at the bottom at 10. So 8 and 9, Kansas State and TCU. I'm not even sure. I guess I'm not sure. Honestly, I like some of the players like McGurl and Kansas State. I think they have some potential, but just they have to take their lumps this year. So, I'm going to say Kansas State 8 and TCU 9. So I don't think it really matters that much, to be honest. Those three are clearly on the one end of the spectrum. Then you have 6 teams that are really 5 teams that are vying, and then Texas in its own kind of little plane, and then Baylor is obviously undefeated. Number 2, they're stealing votes from Gonzaga for number 1 in the country. So what a great conference. They're beating the crap out of each other right now, and it's a lot of fun to watch. It's like a series of cage matches, one after the other, and I'm really enjoying it so far. This is a really good question. This is one of the questions right now surrounding college athletics. And it's from Beware72. He says he wants to know if I think the transfer portal is good for college football. And that's a complicated question because I know most college football fans don't like it. And I understand that. So I like the transfer portal, but I think there needs to be more restriction in terms of, I think the 1-year sit for regular transfers and then grad transfers being immediately eligible, I think that worked. It's funny because Tech has really used some of these guys who transferred that weren't grad transfers that were immediately eligible. And you look at even basketball. Imagine the basketball team without Mac McClung. I know you asked about football, but this whole free agency thing basically that we're seeing right now, if it doesn't make you nervous, then you don't really care about the sport because it's just so different. And we don't really know all the ramifications yet. We don't know how many players are going to be sitting there without a chair when the music stops, just how many scholarships are going to be open or going to be available. Everybody, of course, thinks the grass is greener on the other side, and that's just not always the case. So I think this is one thing that Mighty Joe and I discussed on the Inside the Red Raider Football podcast was, all this moving around is not good for continuity, and a lack of continuity is not good for overall play. So, in terms of the overall level of play, I'd say it probably isn't. Especially if it depends on how much practice is going to be restricted with COVID. If they get full reign with that, then all right. But if you keep restricting practice, you keep allowing players to transfer, less time actually practicing with pads on as a team, the less of a product you're going to get on the field. It's just that plain and simple. It's not like basketball or baseball, really any other sport. We could just go to the park and play football. You got to, throw the pads on. 707 is not real football. Don't give me that stuff. Don't get me wrong. It could be entertaining and all that, but it's not football. Hitting is football. Moving someone to a place, physically moving someone to a place they don't want to go, that is football. That's what it's all about. Imposing your will on them physically and emotionally. And, you're not really going to get that in flag football, or at least you're only going to get to a certain extent. So, like I said, these guys transfer all over. They're not used to their teammates. They're not in concert, as like Mighty Joe said in that podcast. They're not, they don't have that continuity, and they need to go out there on Saturdays, and everything's sped up. The speed of the game is sped up on game day. Then, the quality of the game is not as good, period. This is a nice follow-up to that. This is from Captain Popsicle, who says, JJ, do you think the 25 initial counters will have to be adjusted now that more and more guys are entering the transfer portal across the college football landscape? That's, this is like a testing year, I feel like, because keep in mind, seniors are allowed to come back because of that eligibility waiver. So you're having guys having their second senior season. Like, for example, Texas Tech has 9 seniors coming back, including 7 starters. So that softens the blow some of having so many guys enter the transfer portal and not, at some point, without this eligibility waiver that allows the seniors to come back, you'll have seniors leaving. You have so many guys leaving the transfer portal, guys declaring early for the NFL draft, to where you'll have more guys leaving than the, allotted, the cap of 25 new scholarships you can use. And so, for those who don't know, every year a recruiting cycle, every Power 5 school is allowed, or every Division I football team is allowed 25 new scholarships, whether it be junior college, grad transfer, high school rank, whatever. Walk-ons in your own program too. You're allowed to give 25 new scholarships per year. So once that, and don't get me wrong, there's some moving forward and backward. You can gray shirt and blue shirt, man, go on and on. Like, for example, 6 guys that joined the team late last year are being added to this recruiting cycle. So no matter how you do it, as I like to say on Inside the Red Raiders, the bill eventually comes due. You have to average 25, a cap of 25 new scholarships per year recruiting cycle. So, and Captain Popsicle saying, hey, so many guys are leaving, it's hard to get up to that 85 scholarship limit with that 25 per year rule. So I think the NCAA will be reactive and they will see how it goes and then go from there. But I think at some point, since you've opened this Pandora's box with the transfer portal and all the lax rules where guys can, the one-time exemption and all these rules that are coming into play now that make it so easy to transfer, and leading to a record number of transfers, they're going to have to tweak some things. Or like, for example, Tech, even this year, even though they have 9 seniors coming back, and they're going to end up using all those 25. Like right now, they've already used 21. People point to the small high school class, or regular, kind of traditional signing class of high school and junior college guys, and they're, all together with the transfers coming in, which I've covered extensively in this space. The 6 that counted from last cycle or from last year, the high school guys, the junior college guys, you throw it all together, they've used 21 scholarships, all right? So, and that's from a very good source. So they have 4 scholarships used, that's it. And they're going to be under the 85 scholarship limit. I think between 5 to 10, they'll be under. And I remember them being under by a couple of scholarships, and usually they'll award like a walk-on, or a couple of walk-on scholarships. But this is about as much as I remember them being under, and it's because of this transfer portal deal and plus the 25 scholarship limit. So, it's complicated. It's a mess, and they're gonna have to sort through all of it while they're trying to keep their head afloat. Right now I think the NCAA, it's a big, obviously, department and big unity or big entity. So they should be able to handle more than one thing. But I think right now the biggest thing they're trying to figure out is how to make sure they have the NCAA tournament. Because if they don't have the NCAA tournament, there may not be an NCAA after this. They can't miss 2 tournaments in a row. It's too much of a cash cow for them. So that's the main thing that they're trying to deal with. But then they're gonna have this whole eligibility scholarship problem or issue, at least they're going to have to sort through. It's going to be a mess. So I'm as anxious as you are, Captain Popsicle, to find out what they're going to do. I haven't heard anything yet, and it's the NCAA, so who knows what they'll do, but it's a mess. It is. So I'll be here to help as best I can, all of us sort through it, the aftermath. But they're definitely reactive, and I expect them to kind of take a wait and see approach while they handle other supposedly bigger fish. Along the same line, PantherCat wants to know, is there any announcement yet on the maximum number of scholarships a football team can get next year? No, there's been no announcement. And it's not going to be a problem for Tech in terms of, I don't think they'll reach 85. Just they can't, unless they change the, and they would have had to have already done it, by the way, for this cycle, for 2021. But Tech's going to be below the 85 scholarship limit anyway, so it won't be an issue for them. It might be for some, but if you look across the landscape, man, people, Tech's not the only one. As a matter of fact, it's rare to not have double-digit guys transferring out right now. You look at the rest of the Big 12, Texas, Oklahoma, whatever. And you go down the list, TCU, and then traditional powers like North Carolina or Notre Dame. They all have double-digit guys in the transfer portal. So it's not like this is just a Texas Tech problem. So we'll have to see what they do, how they tweak the scholarship limit. But I think the initial worry about being over was unfounded for a lot of schools, including Texas Tech. Prosper wants to know, he says, it seems like a lot of receivers left. Where does the blame fall? Well, I think there's plenty of blame to go around. And you look at, because you look at receiver especially, Keyshawn Carter leaving, Jalen Polk, the true freshman who played and started a lot of games this last year. Caden Leggett is another guy who, to me, that's not as big of a loss, but you look at the receivers who left, 2 of your top guys, and you have to say, what's happening? TJ Vasher left for the pros, But well, again, I mean, you couldn't count on him anyway. So, but Polk was a surprise. Carter was a disappointment. I like a lot of the guys behind him. I think they'll be fine at receiver, but I'm not going to pretend like it's not a big deal. And who to blame? Well, I mean, hey, go to Joel Fulani. He's Joel Fulani's their position coach, so I blame him. I blame the guys themselves for not trying to make it work. The players, they have a hand in it. The head coach, offensive coordinator David Yost, is part of it. Maybe even Cubby coming in with not with Carter, but with Polk. I don't know what kind of conversation they might have had or did not have. So who knows what their parents are saying in their ears. All that stuff. I also think just the sign of the times, the transfer portal being what it is. Also, like, for example, Keyshawn Carter, he's moving back to his hometown, Houston, so maybe with COVID he wanted to be closer as well. He seems to, though, with Carter, he does not appear to like the coaching staff very much, the situation at Texas Tech. So, I think there's enough blame to go around, for sure, for the receivers, for all the receivers leaving. But I still think there's a lot of really good talent there. They're going to be fine at receiver overall. But I'm not just sweeping this under the rug like it's not a big deal either. It's alarming. I have my eye on it for sure, my ear to the ground with all of it. And we'll just have to see who else leaves, if anybody else leaves. All right, the final question comes from Lance, 4523, who wants to know, why do I think Kyler Edwards has regressed since his freshman year? It's a leading question for one, because that's a big assumption that he has regressed since his freshman year, because I don't know if that's the case. I think overall he is a better basketball player. Now, his shooting percentages, they're night and day. Just off the top of my head, at least how he performed in tournament play as a true freshman, coming off the bench, playing defense, knocking down threes. He scored 12 points in the national championship game. Into now where, he might score 19 one game and then he might almost go over, he's had some key turnovers, but he's also made some big plays too for you. So I think the thing with Kyler is just he's so up and down. You want to see him have some consistency. He may have had some kind of confidence problem, but Beard obviously likes him. He must do all the right things because he continues to get so much playing time. He's one of your better rebounders. He's a primary ball handler. He does a lot for you. It's just you just wish that he was a better shooter. It's as simple as that. Is he misses too many open shots for Big 12 play. So if he could somehow, I think he needs to get out of his own head. I think he's in his head some. To answer your question, I don't want to say the yips, but I feel like when he in one motion where he catches it and shoots instead of thinking about it, he's a pretty good player. But I don't want him to be a primary. He wasn't a primary scorer or a creator as a true freshman, and he shouldn't be now. I think he is a 3-and-D kind of guy. Healthy rebounder. He needs to make open shots, play defense, be a leader, hustle player, defender. And he'll be good, but it should be McClung, it should be Shannon, even Burton in terms of creating with the ball in their hands before Kyler Edwards. And I think that's where you're seeing, I think they're trying to make Kyler something he's not, or maybe he forces it instead of just playing basketball, knocking down open shots, taking good shots, and like I said, contributing in those other areas. So, but I like Kyler. I still think he's going to continue. He's going to improve. I wouldn't say that he's regressed as a whole as a player, but his shooting certainly has. If that's what you're talking about, Lance, since it's that great run as a true freshman when they went to the championship game. But great questions from everybody, as always. I really appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and until next time.